Late again. You know, if you're not careful, somebody's going to notice.
That was so long ago. I doubt anyone's even going to remember.
You were late 3 times last week.
Yeah, but it's only the second time I've been late this week.
Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, timely movies, timeless movies, and everything in between. Rob.
Yep.
It's almost hard to be romantic about the past while working in a video store. You know, a business model so future-proof, you just can't help but be exhilarated about what's to come.
But we are surrounded by the past at all times.
Yeah, when you look at it that way, but we're also just confronted with a brilliant, prosperous future.
Yeah. I mean, actually, sometimes a lot of people tell us that we're stuck in the past.
That's true. That's true. You know, once upon a time, this store was full of laser discs, floor to ceiling.
I don't think they made them any laser discs.
Maybe not. Maybe in this case, I am being a little romantic about how things used to be. But, you know, no matter how much the store changes, regardless of the medium of the movies we stock, there is always the staff recommendation shelf. You and I are tasked with rotating in a fresh batch of movies on the regular, and each time we do, we adhere to a theme. This week's theme is the past.
In the year 2000.
Seems so long ago. And it was a quarter century
I think I did that for
ago.
the future episode, too.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. The year 2000 just has a futuristic quality to it.
It still seems like the future. I think it's gonna seem like the future a lot in the future.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think I had a limited perspective on what this theme could encompass when I first started thinking about it, but you enlightened me to some new ways to look at it, and yeah, the past is pretty broad. We weren't going into this just choosing movies from the past. That'd be too easy. This is more about...
I mean, literally every movie is from
every
the
movie
past.
that exists is from the past. So we had some guidelines.
That would be cheating.
Yeah, that would be cheating. These are movies where the past plays a role in the story.
In the story, or to the characters, or
sure.
Even if, or it's, we didn't want to just go say like, hey, it's a period piece. But I think there's a little bit of that in one of mine, but we'll get to it.
Yeah. I kind of found that, you know, when it comes to characters having a relationship with the past, it's not often that the story is a positive one. It's almost as if the past is usually something that haunts a character.
Yeah.
Or at least often. And I wouldn't say usually. But
yeah, or like it's a time travel movie, you have to go back to the past to fix something.
Yeah.
Or your past is haunting you or whatever.
Right. Well, I'm excited about our 6 films. And as we usually do, I think you should kick us off with your first pick for movies from the past.
Okay, I'm going to choose a movie from basically the present, but I guess technically the past.
Right.
It's from 2024. The movie is Saturday Night.
This was a good one.
This is filed under And Cut Gems. That wasn't mine. I stole that from a Letterboxd user, Demi Adajuyigbe.
Okay.
It was just too good to pass up.
Yeah, I agree.
It's too appropriate. Here's the back of the box. At 11:30 p.m. on October 11th, 1975, a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers changed television forever. This is the story of what happened behind the scenes in the 90 minutes leading up to the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live. Tagline, "The revolution begins at 11:30.
It's great. I think we talked about that on the Rewindies episode.
Did we?
We might have acknowledged it as a good tagline from 2024.
Yeah. You know, it's okay. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it gets the job done, which a lot of these taglines don't.
Yes.
So Saturday Night is Jason Reitman's telling of the run-up to the first episode of Saturday Night Live. Sort of. It's like, it's not really interested in sticking to the facts of what actually happened that night. It's much more interested in building the mythology of kind of the first 5 years of the show.
Interesting. I watched this without knowing the true story, and I didn't bother to look up how true this story was, but I assumed that it's stretching the truth to a certain degree.
There's a lot of it's like clearly stretching the truth, where they're like rehearsing things like randomly with like 4 minutes to go before they go on the air, even though they've already done a dress rehearsal and John Belushi is like in a different part of the city like 3 minutes before they go on air. It's like, I don't really think that kind of stuff happened. But there's a lot of like the backstage stuff, which I've heard stories of, or just kind of, part of the myth of Saturday Night Live that definitely didn't all happen in the 90 minutes before going on for the first time ever. But so if you're looking for like an accurate retelling of the making of the first episode, you're not going to get that. But it's really just a vibes movie.
Yes,
and it's a putting on a show movie. It does capture that insane feeling of trying to put on a live comedy show every week.
I do think there was some legitimacy to whether or not the show was actually going to air.
Yeah, I think that's basically true.
Yeah.
I think, some of this stuff is definitely true.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know if it went up to like the last like millisecond like it did in this movie.
Right.
But yeah, there was some trepidation among the executives. They're like, what are we even doing? Like, this sounds insane. Like, why don't we just tape this somewhere? Why are we doing this show live? Like, is anyone even going to like this? But Johnny Carson had kind of forced them to do this because I guess what was happening at this point was he was on Monday through Friday and they were showing reruns on Saturday. And Johnny Carson was like, listen, I'm done working 5 days a week. I'm going to start working 4 days a week, and the rerun's going to be on Friday. So you got to figure something else out for Saturday night because I don't want to be responsible for that.
Right.
Like, we just passed the 50th anniversary. They just did the special.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of like behind the scenes documentaries into how this show is actually made. And it's madness.
It's a total batshit crazy. Yes.
They start from scratch every Monday afternoon. They're like, okay, cool. Like, we got nothing. What are we doing? And they don't even start really putting the show together until Tuesday when they start, they write the show from like 5 p.m. Tuesday night until 6 a.m. Monday morning or whatever it is.
Yeah, Wednesday morning.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's just it. And whatever they come up with, that's what the show is, basically. And they just have a staff of people that work nonstop, like 500 people that work from like Tuesday night until Saturday night nonstop.
It's a minor miracle that they can do this at all once, much less every week for 50 years.
Yeah. And I mean, they rewrite the show up until like minutes before it comes on.
Yeah.
Even during the broadcast, they're back there on cue cards. They're back there writing cue cards.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this. We do use cue cards for this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've never introduced anyone to our cue card holder.
Yeah.
And we never will.
Right, yes.
But it's all scripted.
Well, there's two, one on each side, of course.
Sure.
We each have our own. So yeah, it's just kind of a miracle that they're able to pull this together at all, and then that has been going on for so long. And I think that's like one of the reasons the show is so special. But it's kind of a cool thing about the movies. They make it seem like we know what that's like to be back there going like, what the fuck are we doing? How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
What even are we doing? I don't think anyone really knew.
No, I don't even think Lorne Michaels at the time knew what was going to happen. I think he had an idea.
Yeah.
But
because back then there was the variety shows.
Sure.
And I don't think it was conceived as necessarily a comedy show. I mean, it was because like back then you had your variety shows and you had your comedy sketches in between the musical acts, and the guy would come out and do some stand up and whatever. And I think it was kind of conceived as that type of show, but with younger people.
Right. Right.
And then I think eventually it was like, well, the comedy part just took over, and it became a sketch show with musical guests.
Right. Yeah, I think that, if he were to describe it, which he doesn't, before the first episode actually airs, he probably would have talked about, it's a celebration of art, the performing arts.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is that. But you're right. It has become a comedy sketch show.
Yeah. And that's what it's been since like 1975 and a half, like they figured it out pretty quick. That's what the show is. And I think it's because like they had people becoming stars.
Right.
I think even on the first episode, like George Carlin did 3-4 monologues.
Yeah.
Because that was just what you did. You had a guy come out and talk, Yeah. I think they had 2 musical acts.
Yes.
And so like, they only had a handful of sketches, and it just kind of eventually, Chevy Chase was all of a sudden on the, cover of Time magazine. They're like, well, that's what this show is, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strangely, going through all this 50th anniversary stuff, I've come to realize that like, Saturday Night Live might be like one of the few institutions left that I care at all about.
Yeah.
Even though like I have barely watched the show since like, I don't know, 2000.
I mean, it's been good, and
yeah,
it's kind of like comfort food. It's there, and you can rely on it, and it's going to be satisfying.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad to know that it's there.
Yeah.
I think like everybody I've found it in junior high school or whatever, and I think I watched it on Comedy Central, like the reruns.
Yeah.
But I remember like for the last 20 years, like YouTube is pretty much my only contact with that show.
I see.
Or like DVDs, like the best ofs. They've always been good about putting the show like where people are watching stuff. So like that's how they stayed relevant. Because like I don't know, 10 years ago you could have been like, it's been canceled for 3 years. I don't think I would have known.
No.
You always hear about it sometimes, like, oh, this guy's doing an impression of the president or something. But
sure,
like until like the last few years, I never really like caught up with it.
Yeah, I mean, it as much as it has changed, it also hasn't changed. There's constantly like new cast members coming in, but they are still doing this. There's still Weekend Update.
Still the same thing.
There's still, like a musical
and it's a pretty satisfying hour of television.
It is. Yeah.
It's always been uneven. It's always been, since the second episode, it's been popular to say it used to be better. It's just one of those things because like it's actually never been that good.
Right.
Even if you go back to your favorite episodes and watch every sketch that aired, which sometimes you can't even do because they like get rid of the ones that sucked and you never see them again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like how many great sketches per year? They do like what, like 200, 300 sketches a year? There's probably like 10 really good ones, even in like the great years.
Yeah.
I think people just have a selective memory because like they're doing a lot of shit. They start writing it on Tuesday.
Right. And that's what, what makes this movie great because it's casting a spotlight on what happens behind the stage rather than necessarily what's on. I mean, obviously there's we see some of the sketches unfolding, but yeah, the sheer mayhem that leading up to
and
11:30.
The cast is kind of incredible.
Yeah, the cast is great. The guy playing Chevy Chase is excellent.
So good. I don't like most of them are young actors that like I'm honestly not that familiar with.
No.
A handful here and there. But they're like they're able to capture the characters insanely well, but they're not quite slipping into character or parody.
Mm-mm.
I think maybe that has a little bit to do with the fact that we don't spend a ton of time with a lot of them, except for the guy that plays Lorne. Pretty much everyone else like gets a few minutes here and there, so it doesn't like seem like too much. But yeah, they're all like spot on without being too heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm fine with the fact that this is like not accurate. I'm fine with the fact that it's just kind of like a big slobbery blowjob to SNL.
Yeah.
It's just a high octane hangout movie. I wouldn't really consider it a comedy, but it has funny moments.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say that. Yeah, it's not laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, it has comedy in it, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a comedy. It does have a little bit of that Uncut Gems feeling, where it's just like we got to go, we got a show going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety.
Yeah,
You know?
So Saturday Night is rated 3.5 overall on Letterboxd. 1,000 people have it in their 4 favorites, and 28% agree with my 4-star rating, including Dustin, who writes in their review, "So saging does work."
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So yeah, like SNL, Saturday Night is chaotic, exciting, funny, uneven, and at the end, it really feels like they accomplished something. So even if it was only for one night, and so I'm putting Saturday Night on the staff recommendation shelf this week for the topic of the past.
Fine choice and a timely one, given this is the 50th anniversary of SNL. It's hard to escape, or at least it has felt like it was hard to escape Saturday Night Live leading up to the 50th anniversary special. But this is a great addition to, like you said, the mythology that is SNL.
There's actually another movie called Saturday Night, directed by James Franco.
Really?
That is a documentary behind the scenes of a Saturday Night Live episode. I think he shot it in like 2008 as part. Remember when he was like, after he had done whatever movies that made him a star, he went back to NYU film school.
Oh, yeah.
He made a documentary as part of that about the making of an episode of SNL. And I guess it was part of his project. Eventually, he took the footage and turned it into like an hour and a half long movie, and I think it got released in like 2012, 2014. But it's on YouTube. It's pretty good.
Interesting.
Yeah, it basically follows Bill Hader. It's that was like the focus of his documentary. The longer version that you can find online is a little bit more wider in scope.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty good behind the scenes doc.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, for my first movie, I am going further back in time than you are, to the year 2000.
The future.
The future, yeah. And I plucked this from the Ink Master section of the store. My first movie is Memento. Here's the back of the box. Leonard Shelby suffers from short-term memory loss following a traumatic attack that left his wife dead. Unable to form new memories, he pieces together his reality through a system of Polaroid photos, notes, and tattoos, all leading him toward the man he believes is responsible for his wife's murder. However, as he gathers more clues, the truth becomes increasingly uncertain in this gripping psychological thriller from Christopher Nolan. Tagline, "Some memories are best forgotten." Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it fits. This definitely put Christopher Nolan kind of on the map. It wasn't his first movie, but it was the one that started getting him the movies that we know him for. And yeah, this definitely plays with time and perception. It's uniquely structured in the sense that it unfolds in kind of reverse chronological order, forcing viewers to experience kind of Leonard's fractured memory firsthand. And so, like I said, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, it's based on a story by his brother, Jonathan Nolan, who's basically best known now for his writing. I think he did Westworld.
Yeah, they do TV shows now.
Does a lot of TV. Guy Pearce is Leonard. The supporting performances from Carrie-Anne Moss and Joe Pantoliano are also here. So how does this fit the theme? The past is kind of everything and nothing in Memento. So Leonard's mission is fueled by what he remembers of his past, his wife's murder, but his condition means that his own history is constantly kind of like slipping away from him. He can only retain like minutes at a time before his mind resets.
It's not totally consistent how that works.
Nope. It sure isn't. And we'll get into that.
Yeah, I want to.
But it's an interesting way of telling this story. It's probably the only way to tell this story and have it be compelling.
Well, I think that's the point, right?
It is, yeah. So this was shot in just 25 days on a relatively low budget of $9 million. It ended up making $40 million, which is pretty good. And like I said, it unfolds in reverse order. And there are some black and white scenes that are interspersed that kind of move forward chronologically to ground the audience. But Yeah, it's an interesting way to string together a narrative. It did win Best Original Screenplay, or I'm sorry, it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay and Best Film Editing, which both tied directly to narrative.
Yeah. It's hard to argue.
But why did I choose this? So Leonard Shelby, the past is lost. You know, his life is defined by what he can and cannot remember. You know, before his accident, the past is a distant memory. Afterward, it's something that's constantly being like erased and rewritten.
Well, his past before the accident is in stone, kind of, right?
Yeah, that part is intact. He can still remember his life leading up to the night where things happen, but everything after that is just a tape that's being re-recorded, re-recorded. But I like that this explores how memory is something of an unreliable narrator. And, it makes the past both the most important and most elusive element of the story. And, it forces you to question how much of the past you can truly trust. Lots of people like this movie.
In fact, you're recommending it to our customers.
I am.
So obviously you like this movie also.
Well, I have a fundamental problem with an element of logic in this movie that makes it really hard for me to appreciate this the way the rest of the world does. I take issue with the fact that Leonard is constantly telling people he has this condition where he is unable to form new memories.
Yeah.
And obviously, he would only learn of that condition after having an accident and being unable to form new memories. He shouldn't be able to remember that he forgets things.
Correct.
And he's always telling people that he can't.
I mean, you are correct.
And it drives me crazy. Yeah. But
I don't know what to say.
I mean, I am in a minority here. This movie averages a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. People fucking love this.
It's so good.
I have to give it credit.
It's the way the story is told is like it's so well done. You just have to let for me, like I'm like I don't know. Like you could pick apart so much of the logic of this movie.
You have to let some things go.
Yeah, like you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I can't argue with that part. You're not wrong.
So I want to direct our customers to another film that handles this more deftly. In a similar manner, we have a character who has short-term memory loss. That movie is 50 First Dates, and I actually have not seen this. So right, so Adam Sandler's character falls in love with Drew Barrymore. She forgets the whole day at the end of the day. And every day she wakes up, it's brand new. She has forgotten everything. And the way that movie handles this is, and this is a bit of a spoiler, he makes a VHS tape for her that she plays in the morning, and it kind of catches her up on everything. All the relevant stuff.
How does she remember to watch the tape?
He puts it in for her.
Oh, why is he there? Does she know who she is?
They're in love.
So they knew each other before that day?
Well, no. He is constantly like going on essentially a first date with her and has to figure out how to make this relationship last. And so that's the way he does it.
It sounds like it'd be tough to schedule those dates.
Indeed. Yeah. Nevertheless.
So which movie are you putting on the show?
I'm still putting Memento up because I recognize that the world appreciates this more than I do. And I do like that it tells a story in a very unconventional fashion. It's a compelling mystery, and it pulls the rug out from underneath you more than once. And
but not in a cheap way either.
Not in a cheap way.
Oh fuck, you're like first you're like, oh, I got this figured out. And they're like, oh no, wait, he got me again, and he got me again.
Yes.
I think it's just so cool how I think the idea is. I think he was just like, how do you tell a story backwards?
Yeah.
How do you tell that story to do with dealing with memory? I think with a lot of Nolan movies, people make the mistake of giving this more meaning than it has. And I think that's maybe where you're butting up against it, because you're like, it can't. It's like people act like a lot of Christopher Nolan movies are like so profound,
like Inception.
And you're really like, no, it's just a good movie, you know.
Yeah,
that's kind of what this is like. And like when you're like, well, there's a clear logical inconsistency in the premise. And so it's easy to say, like, all you people who think you're so smart, look, it's like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And I think like a lot of Nolan movies, like, it's not that profound. It's just a really cool way to tell a story.
He's an excellent filmmaker.
Yeah.
And he gets great performances out of his actors. He tells stories in interesting ways.
The fact that you were able to pull this off is a miracle, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a puzzle that should never have come together.
Right.
And he tells it in such a perfect way.
Yeah.
And there's fucking at least 20 holes in the plot, or, you know, that there's all kinds of holes you can blow in this logic. But like, it's so well done. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to try to do that.
I am really trying to turn a blind eye to it. And I had originally given this 2 stars. It is up to 3 for me. There are only 1% of viewers who agreed with my original 2-star rating. But
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
2-star rating.
I was just so mad. And I think, I'm probably, I was probably proud of myself for figuring something out.
Yeah. Again, because everyone like congratulates themselves for liking this movie, especially like when this movie came out when we were like 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's at the perfect age too, where all our friends were like, "Oh, I like Memento. I'm like a cool like smart guy who listens to Radiohead or something." Yes. And so it's like it's easy to be like, "No, you're wrong," because I found something that pisses me off about it.
Right.
Which I support you in that. That's true haterism.
You're not wrong. No, but this is now a 3-star movie for me. I am learning to appreciate the other aspects of this film. There are 27,000 people that have this on their list of 4 favorites. So, like I said, the vast majority see it for what it is. I did enjoy the 4.5-star review by the user True, who said, "This is what Finding Dory should have been," which
I guess.
Good, maybe. So that's my first pick, Memento. It's going on the shelf. I'm learning to love it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take us to a movie that was made in the past.
Oh, great. For a change.
The year is 2004. The movie is National Treasure. This is filed under MapQuests.
It is that.
Here's the back of the box. It is absolutely terrible. Modern treasure hunters, led by archaeologist Ben Gates, search for a chest of riches rumored to have been stashed away by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin during the Revolutionary War. The chest's whereabouts may lie in secret clues embedded in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and Gates is in a race to find the gold before his enemies do. The chest's whereabouts may lie. The chest how do whereabouts lie somewhere?
I don't know.
And like also not in the Constitution.
Nope.
The Constitution is not in this movie whatsoever.
No.
And I don't remember them ever mentioning George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin working together.
No.
I don't think that happened. Maybe I missed something in the movie.
You didn't.
But yeah, definitely not the Constitution. The Constitution has nothing to do with this movie.
No.
The tagline is a little bit better. A little bit. In order to break the code, one man will have to break all the rules.
Oh.
You shouldn't be allowed to break rules in a tagline.
I think that can be shorter too. To break the code, he breaks all the rules or something.
Yeah,
come
there's ways to clean that up. So Nicolas Cage, very good friend of the shelf.
Yeah.
He is an archaeologist who's obsessed with this so-called treasure that dates to the beginning of the country. It was guarded by the Knights Templar, then the Founding Fathers, who had to hide it from the British for reasons.
Yeah, reasons.
Reasons. Why this treasure exists in the first place doesn't make a ton of sense. Why it's bouncing around from group to group also doesn't make a ton of sense. The idea that like the Freemasons or whoever had it at whenever time, like had to hide the treasure away to keep it away from the British is like completely ridiculous.
It's a lot of treasure too.
Couldn't they have just like given it away or like used it for something? Like they're like, no, it's too dangerous for the British to touch it, so we're gonna hide it from ourselves. I don't understand. Like, what is, and also like, what is the point of hiding a treasure? Why is everyone hiding these treasures?
I don't know.
Like,
because you got to have more treasure in order to sustain life without the treasure you're hiding, right? So,
I mean, like, what's like, or keeping it hidden behind all these clues? Like what is like? This is a trope that's been in stories for hundreds of years.
Pirates.
Why
Pirates
are people? Why are people doing it?
I don't know.
Why? What's the point? You know, like who's supposed to find it? You know, like in the movie, like The Goonies. You know.
Yeah. Or the Count of Monte Cristo.
Right. Yeah. Like there's all these clues and maps and like complicated traps. Like who's building that stuff?
Yeah.
And how do you design that in a way that so that it works 100 years later? Like there's just no way. No. Yeah, it's incredible engineering, if nothing else. And like, do you want your treasure to be found? Or not found. Like, what's the point of all this stuff?
Yeah, it's just a lot of pranks and practical jokes on people who are looking for it in the future, and you're never going to get to see all that unfold.
No, yeah, it just seems like a ton of work for no reason. But this is just like a logical inconsistency that exists in every treasure movie, every treasure map story.
Right, right.
So does all this add up? Probably not. National Treasure is a pretty dumb movie, but mostly in the right ways, I think.
Yeah, mostly in the right ways. I hadn't seen this before you recommended it.
Nice.
So it's my first foray.
Like the plot's really convoluted and like
extremely
like
convoluted.
in ways that it doesn't have to be.
No.
You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it for 2 seconds. And then like, and it's just complicated in all these ways. You're like, I guess it's kind of like, why would you hide a treasure? Just complicated for reasons that no one understands.
Yeah.
So like explanations in this movie to kind of pop up for things like, oh, well, look, this probably means this. And they're always right. Like they never get something wrong.
No.
Or that they at one point they get magic glasses that just shows them what to do.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of dumb stuff in this movie like that. But like, I don't know. It's an adventure. It's an adventure movie.
It's an adventure.
It's simply a fun adventure heist movie.
Yeah.
And it stars Nicolas Cage. I mean, like, you can't do better than him.
Well, you also get Jon Voight, another friend of the shelf, in probably his most hinged performance.
He is way too hinged. Sean Bean's in this, too.
Sean Bean, yeah. Love Sean Bean.
Harvey Keitel.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, there's nothing challenging about this movie. It's family friendly. It's uncomplicated as long as you don't try to make sense of anything, which I think is a good way to go into this.
Yeah.
It's just it's a rock solid 3-star popcorn movie for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a 3-star movie.
There was one sequel.
It's not, well, there's actually another sequel. There's one sequel with Nicolas Cage. There's another sequel that I think has totally different characters in it.
Well, they made a TV show, I think, for Disney Plus or something like that.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, but...
Well, here's the thing. The sequel's good. The sequel's about what this is. It's like it's another 3-star movie. It's like, cool, let's put this on, get some pizza for the kids.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those movies. They were talking about making a third one.
See, I was going to say, I seem to remember when these movies came out that it felt as though the studio was trying to turn this into a franchise, and it's going to be like the next Mission Impossible.
Well, that's kind of what happened. So these movies came out and they made money.
Yeah.
I think the first one made like $350 million. The second one made 500 something worldwide.
That's enough to be a treasure.
So these movies came out and made money, and so they were working on a third one, and Disney is the studio for this. They're not interested because they could never figure out how to turn this into a proper Disney franchise because it's not unique enough, you know? It's hard to make a National Treasure theme park ride that doesn't just seem like a ripoff of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's no like Halloween costumes. There's no like t-shirts. And so for Disney, they're like, oh, we made $300 million at the box office, but like otherwise, what else are we going to do with it? So like, why even bother?
I can see that because even the main character, I mean, Nicolas Cage is fun to watch do pretty much anything. But like that character isn't iconic in the way that Indiana Jones is.
No, like, what would you even do?
He's no Ethan Hunt either.
Yeah, what would you do for this movie that's like
yeah,
a Disney thing to do? Like, what's the Happy Meal? right? It's like a guy wearing what is Nick Cage even wearing in this movie? A fucking like fleece vest?
Yeah.
So he's dressed like a dad.
Maybe you give out the 4D glasses or something.
Yeah. so yeah, they just that was what I've always heard is like they like instead like it seems like it should be a franchise where like they just keep making these movies and Nick Cage gets a fat paycheck for making a Disney movie every couple years, but they just could never figure out how to make it a theme park ride. They didn't know like how to make it anything beyond just like a money-making movie franchise, which is not what Disney's in the business of.
No.
And so they just kind of gave up on it. Like, maybe we get another one. I'm not sure. Like, they're fun. They're fun movies.
Yeah.
So National Treasure, it's rated 3.3 overall on Letterboxd. 2,500 people have it in their 4 favorites. And a plurality of 29% agree with my 3-star rating, including Jordan Beaumont Anderson.
Oh.
Who writes...
Sounds like a treasure hunter.
Like drinking the lukewarm liquid pooling at the bottom of a Waffle House garbage can and realizing it actually goes down pretty smooth.
I feel like you could put that for any 3-star movie.
Yeah. So, National Treasure is it's a crowd-pleasing adult Goonies fetch quest.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, I'm putting it on the staff recommendation shelf for the past.
I had fun.
Yeah. And if you want to, like, it's a guy who's obsessed with the past.
I might have fallen asleep for like 5 minutes,
That's
but
fine.
like not missed anything. Yeah,
This movie was directed by John Turteltaub, who has previously been on the shelf for The Meg.
that tracks.
Yeah. So you can fall asleep for 5 minutes in this movie, and you're fine.
Yeah. I did have to laugh at near the end, which I might be spoiling a little bit for people, but. You know, they get to where the treasure should be, and it's not there, and Sean Bean's all pissed off, and then they're just like, oh, well, it's in Boston, under a staircase. Yeah. And he's like, got it.
Right.
I believe you.
Yeah, that happens like 15 times in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really? I'm on my way.
Yeah, good stuff. I had fun with this. All right, well, I am taking us to 2013. My second movie. It is The World's End from the very last call section of the store. And I was a little bit inspired to bring this to the shelf after we just talked about Edgar Wright with Last Night in Soho and made mention of the Cornetto trilogy. This is the final installment of that trilogy, which also includes Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. But here's the back of the box. Gary King is a washed-up alcoholic who never moved past his glory days in high school. Determined to relive the greatest night of his life, he rounds up his old friends and drags them back to their hometown to complete the legendary pub crawl they failed to finish decades ago. As they make their way through 12 bars, they soon realize that the town has changed in ways they never could have imagined, leading to a night of both reckoning and revelation. Tagline: good food, fine ales, total annihilation. Which, you know.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Doesn't make great sense.
No. So like the other 2 movies in this quote-unquote trilogy, we get Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. There's also Martin Freeman and Patty Considine and Eddie Marsan who play the estranged friends. But Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are really the anchors of this movie and all 3 movies in this trilogy. This one kind of flips the script a little bit and has Nick Frost playing the straight man, so to speak, and Simon Pegg being a little bit of the wild card, which actually works. I think it's the most interesting Simon Pegg performance of the 3 movies, even if it's a little bit depressing at times. But yeah, how does it fit this theme? This is very much about a man who cannot let go of his past. Gary is so obsessed with recapturing his youth that he forces his friends to revisit a town that has long since moved on without them. And the film explores how nostalgia can be destructive, especially when it blinds someone to the present. Gary's refusal to change kind of leads to chaos on both a personal and global scale.
Also 12 bars. Like,
oh my God, yeah.
I mean, these guys are like our age now. It's like, or, basically, but it's like, I can't
imagine.
Can't even conceive of
three would be fine.
Yeah. Three would be a lot.
Yeah.
But,
can we be
12?
12 is nuts. So Edgar Wright was inspired by his own experiences of failed pub crawls and small town disillusionment when writing this story. But the script, while conceived in the early 2000s, wasn't really developed until after Hot Fuzz. There's some actually good fighting in this. A lot of it was kind of influenced by Jackie Chan fight choreography. So we get a lot of like long takes that emphasize like movement that ties in a little bit to the review I plucked. But I was impressed. Like the fight scenes are fun to watch.
He can direct action pretty well, I think. I think he's just good. I think this was right before Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
He's a good action director.
Yeah, it's a shame. The MCU tapped him for Ant-Man, but he was kind of plucked from that project by the studio because I guess creative differences. But
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
that's fine.
The MCU is doing its own thing, and Edgar Wright probably doesn't fit there. So
yeah, like I mean, what would an Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie be in 2025? We'd look back on and go like, oh, that was the one that Edgar Wright did. You know what I mean? We wouldn't even like, I don't know. It would be a Marvel movie more than an Edgar Wright movie. Like,
100%.
I don't know. Just go like, whatever. It's one of those Marvel movies.
Right. So why did I choose this? This is very much about a man who cannot let go of his past to the point where it kind of defines who he is. Unlike many films that I think glorify this type of nostalgia, Edgar Wright isn't afraid to highlight just how sad it is for Gary King.
Oh, they lean so hard into how fucking sad these kinds of people are.
I mean, pathetic. Like they're not afraid to make him seem like the biggest loser for being so connected to life decades earlier, and indeed his inability to move forward damages friendships, it stunts his emotional growth, ultimately brings about a rather bizarre apocalyptic scenario. But, the movie's both comedic and a little bit just depressing at the same time. And that balance is what makes it special. And I think that a lot of people look at this as maybe the weakest link in the trilogy, but I don't know. I like that it's different.
I think it's definitely the weakest link in the trilogy.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little bit of Edgar Wright making this kind of last movie with his two friends who like all began their career together and like they're all growing up and moving on. This is their last hurrah. I think there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't love this movie. I think this movie is a perfect illustration of how a movie can be, quote, too long, but not based on like the number of minutes in its runtime. Do you know what I mean? It's like a matter of structure.
Yeah.
And this movie is 109 minutes, which is like absolutely in the range of what a movie like this could be,
Yeah.
But the way the movie is structured does the movie no favors whatsoever. Like it really cuts the legs out from underneath it, because what's this movie about? It's about a group of middle-aged men who recreate this bar crawl in their old hometown, and then they come to discover their town has been overtaken by robot aliens.
Yeah.
And like the proper structure of a movie, the quote proper structure of a movie, is like you get to like that what is this movie about moment about like 15 to 20 minutes in, sometimes maybe 30.
Definitely
right?
part of the first act.
So like it ends the third act like 20 minutes into Old School is like them deciding to start their grown-up fraternity, right? Right. 20 minutes into Panic Room is like when the Panic Room door gets locked. 20 minutes into John Wick is when he's like, I'm going to kill all these motherfuckers, right? Because like it's not like some math problem. It's just like that's just like human psychology, where it's just like, oh, like that's like the point where people are like, okay, like what's this about? Like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And in World's End, we see our first alien 40 minutes into the movie. That's half a movie.
That is half a movie.
And so like there's I don't know, like the first act of this movie is like that constant feeling of like, okay, when does this get going? Like when do we find out what kind of movie we're watching?
What's really going on here? Yeah.
Not even what's really going on here, but like what's this movie? Like, is this what the movie is about? Is just these guys? And eventually when it just, I don't know, for me it reaches a point, and I think this is why this movie just didn't work for a lot of people. It just reaches the point where it's just like, are we just going to be watching these guys? Is like this what this movie is about? Like, is this? And there's so much plot involved in like, I don't know, they just talk about like your sister and your mom and this and whatever and da 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 da. It's like, whoa, like when do we see like? And then as soon as they have that fight in the bathroom, you're like, yes, right?
Yeah.
And like the rest of the movie is just like this wacky sci-fi drinking comedy,
right?
And it's a totally different movie. You
Yeah.
know? And the first 40 minutes are like, I don't know. I feel like if that was like 5 minutes longer, this movie would be a disaster.
Yeah, this movie is definitely two parts.
Yeah.
There's the friends reuniting part and then the sci-fi wacky comedy. But you're calling out something interesting that I think is true of every movie in this trilogy, but this is the most egregious example because even Shaun of the Dead takes its time getting to the zombie apocalypse. Hot Fuzz, same thing with the town being kind of taken over. And each of them are longer than, for your example, Old School, but not as long as this. Yeah. And so... I don't disagree.
Yeah, 40 minutes is just too. Like I looked at the clock. I'm like, how far are we into this?
Yeah.
When that kid shows up in the bathroom, it was 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and like that's just too long for a first act.
I agree.
You know, not this. You know, it's not a Quentin Tarantino movie.
No, nor should it be.
Like this movie has a structure.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you just put way too many minutes in the first part.
Right. Well, this ended up grossing $46 million on a budget of $20, so it was a modest success. This averages a 3.6 on Letterboxd, which is about on par with where I have it. There are 2.6 thousand people who have this among their 4 favorites. I did like the review by Liam F., who kind of calls attention to something we were talking about earlier when he says, "How is it that this film about a bunch of middle-aged blokes getting drunk together has far better fight scenes than the entirety of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has to offer?"
Because the CGI budget was way lower.
Yeah. They actually had to do it for real. So yeah, a little bit of a divisive pick, especially among Edgar Wright's other classics, but I'm putting it on a shelf for my second movie that deals with the past.
Yeah, I like it overall. I think once it gets going, it's a really fun movie. It's just
it's right.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take us deep into the past.
Ooh,
deep into the past. 1975. The movie is Hard Times.
Hard Times.
This is filed under Trouser Sports.
Fitting.
Fitted trousers. Back of the box. In the Depression, Cheney, a strong, silent street fighter, joins with Speed, a promoter of no-holds-barred street boxing bouts. They go to New Orleans, where Speed borrows money to set up fights for Cheney, but Speed gambles away any winnings. Tagline, New Orleans, 1933. In those days, words didn't say much. It's really good.
That is quite good.
1975 was not they didn't have the snappy taglines.
No, they didn't.
Like, that's pretty good for some.
That's probably the best one we've got tonight.
Probably.
Yeah.
So Hard Times, it's Walter Hill's directorial debut. Stars Charles Bronson as a drifter during the Great Depression, who kind of makes his way by wandering into the world of bare-knuckle street fights. Walter Hill's been on the shelf before for the Warriors, another movie about life on the streets.
Oh, yeah. I can see some parallels between this and the Warriors.
It's not totally unlike the Warriors.
Yeah.
So Charles Bronson, he hooks up with James Coburn as his manager, and they kind of hit the road to make some money on the street fighting circuit. And it turns into like a barnstorming sports movie, not unlike ... All the Marbles, which I brought to the shelf recently, or Knight Riders,
Right.
which is about a Renaissance festival on motorcycles. So like you have some characters who've kind of found a way to make a buck. They just travel the country to like where the money is, and they showcase their skills. It's kind of like there's a little bit of a color of money aspect to this too.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, because it's not as simple as just like rolling up and kicking people's asses. There's a strategy to it. You have to con people into it. You have to convince them to bet money against you, and you have to convince people to underestimate you or have emotional reasons to like want to fight you, or you can't just go in there because if you win every fight, no one's going to bet against you.
I would like to see Paul Newman and Tom Cruise in this movie.
I wouldn't be against. They should have done another movie. So you don't get a lot of bare knuckle boxing in movies.
No.
Generally, hand-to-hand combat in movies is, it's like martial arts, or you get melee weapons. You don't get a lot of guys that just like stand there and punch each other.
Right.
And I think the street fighting is pretty good. It's not just stage punching.
No, it's believable. You can feel those punches.
Yeah, and even though Charles Bronson is like the oldest and smallest guy in this movie, like it's still believable that he's like beating the shit out of everybody.
I mean, Charles Bronson's a tough motherfucker.
He just looks like he's winning these fights.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
want to fight him. I don't care how old he is when I'm standing across him. I don't want to fight him.
Yeah, and plus, like, I don't know. He's probably like 50 when he made this movie.
Probably.
And like 50-year-old guys are like Charles Bronson at 50 is like not a dude to fuck with. You know what I mean? Like 50-year-old guys in 1975 are pretty old, I think. But like they were tough.
Charles Bronson's one of those guys like Ed Harris who just always looks 50.
He's looked 50 since day one. I've always said he looks like a very handsome ball peen hammer.
Yes,
like he doesn't look like there's something about his face. It looks like it's made out of iron.
Accurate.
But he's not unattractive.
No.
Like attractive like a hammer would be attractive.
So
fair. The way Hard Times deals with the past is it's a movie from the mid-'70s, but it's about the Great Depression. Hard Times, right?
Right.
But it's not just like, I'm not just picking it because it's a movie that was made in 75 that was made, that was a period piece.
Right.
That'd be too easy. I think this movie is a movie that uses the past to say something about the present, which at that point was in 1975.
Right.
And so we see a lot of movies from the 70s that show this. But the 70s was a tough time. The economy was bad. The government had just gone through scandals, and no one had any faith in institutions, and things were just kind of falling apart. Their gas was way too expensive, And so this movie is showcasing the hard times of the 70s by showcasing it through the Great Depression of the 30s. And that's why there's a parallel to this in a lot of the 70s sports road movies that we were talking about.
Yes.
Because it's kind of, people were like, we're going through the same shit,
Yeah.
So it is a movie about the past trying to say something about the present.
I think that's a fair take. I definitely get that from this.
Hard Times, it's rated 3.6 overall on Letterboxd. 25 people have it in their 4 favorites. So,
okay.
It's one of those movies that I don't think it has a lot of viewings. It doesn't get rented here at the store very often.
It might now.
The Walter Hill completists are on it, but not many other people. 33% agree with my 4-star rating, including Shanu Khan's, who says in his review, "This movie rips. It's also so funny that Charles Bronson was an action star because he just looks like a little boy with the oldest face." Which is true. So Hard Times delves into the past to show us dudes fighting dudes. So I'm putting it on the staff recommendation shelf this week for the past.
This was the first time I saw it, and it's a 3-star movie for me, but like any ball peen hammer, it gets better with use. Yes. And maybe I'll come back to this in the future and bump it up. But yeah, always glad to give a watch to a movie that I otherwise wouldn't have picked up. And You have a knack for finding those.
If you want to see some good bare knuckle boxing,
Yeah.
this is not a bad movie to pick up.
Yeah, well, it's always fun to see Charles Bronson do just about anything.
Yeah.
So give this one a look. All right, that brings me to my last pick, which is even further in the past. We're going to 1950. This is from the pool safety section of the store. And my final pick is Sunset Boulevard. Here's the back of the box. A down-on-his-luck screenwriter, Joe Gillis, finds himself entangled in the life of faded silent film star Norma Desmond. As she dreams of making a triumphant return to Hollywood, Joe becomes both her muse and her prisoner, leading to a tragic unraveling of illusions and reality. Tagline: we usually get bad taglines from this era, and this isn't a great one, but it's at least short.
Great.
Yeah. Tagline: a Hollywood story.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah, for 1950,
Yep.
can't ask for much better. So Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard, definitely one of the more iconic movies about Hollywood. It's blending noir and social commentary. And yeah, it stars William Holden as Joe Gillis, and Norma Desmond is played by Gloria Swanson in what was definitely a career-defining role for her. She's playing the part of a silent film star. She herself was a silent film star, and exactly right for this part. Originally, Billy Wilder wanted Mae West for this role, but he landed on Gloria Swanson, who was only 50 when she filmed this. And, you know, she does all the things that make silent film stars great. I mean, her expressions, her face, her eyes, everything is just, it's haunting. It's beautiful.
But you can also see why it wouldn't work in modern filmmaking.
Yeah, when people started talking.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense in that sense.
She's animated in a way that she had to be, but there's no place for that in the world.
This is why she's washed up.
Yeah. So how does it fit this theme? So similar themes here to what we got in The World's End. Same, but different. Norma Desmond is definitely trapped in the past. Her entire identity is built on the silent film era, and she refuses to acknowledge that Hollywood has moved on without her. She still sees herself as a star. She still writes fan letters to herself, lives in a mansion that's very much frozen in time. And yeah, this is about what happens when someone cannot let go of their past and when nostalgia kind of turns into madness.
She's also living off of her past. You know? Like 100%. She's not just like a washed up movie star that's like withering away in her, you know, decrepit mansion. Like she actually like has a lot of money and like she was a huge star and like she's just kind of like living off the dividends of that.
Oh yeah. And I mean, she has a ton of money. Clearly, like they're painting her to be like a true icon from that era of filmmaking. And
she was like, I own 4 blocks downtown, which today would be worth like $35 billion.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's some eerie authenticity here. So Cecil B. DeMille plays himself. And the mansion was actually owned by the J. Paul Getty family. This was shot in black and white in spite of the fact that color was pretty dominant in 1950. But that was meant to kind of enhance the noir atmosphere, make Norma's world feel like it was kind of decaying around her, and also make the past just feel more distant. This was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, won 3, including Best Screenplay. And Charles Brackett and D.M. Marshman also took home some awards. But why did I choose this? Fucking Gloria Swanson is so good as Norma Desmond. We talked about that already a little bit. But this movie's about writing. It's about movie making. It's an L.A. movie. But most of all,
it's about being broke and desperate.
It is about being broke and desperate. But most of all, it's a quintessential film about being haunted by the past. And unlike World's End, where nostalgia is portrayed as self-destructive, Norma's relationship with the past is more than just illusional. It's pretty tragic. So
But you can see why she wants to live in it, because she was the fucking star.
Yeah.
She was the best. She was the biggest thing going.
She was.
So if you're going to like live in your past, like, at least she had a good one to go back to.
Yeah, it was a comfortable one, no doubt. Hollywood has definitely forgotten her, but she hasn't forgotten Hollywood. And I think that this is a cautionary tale about clinging to what was rather than facing what is. But I think that even today, 75 years later, this is still powerful because the themes are pretty universal. You know, it's about the fear of being forgotten, the pain of irrelevance. You made a great observation. This has a lot in common with The Substance, which was one of my favorite movies from 2024. So I think it's a great final addition to the shelf for the past because it's very much about the tragedy associated with not being able to let it go.
Yeah, it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
We always say.
This was a box office success, earning over $5 million, which was huge for the time. Roger Ebert called it the best drama ever made about the movies, and Letterboxd agrees. It's got a whopping 4.4 average. 6.9 thousand people have this among their 4 faves. I have this at 4 stars, along with 27% of other people. I have a hard time coming up with why it's not 5 stars. It's probably going to get up there for me in the future. Yeah. And I plucked a review by Netscape Negro, who gave this 5 stars, and he said, "I can't even think of anything funny or insightful. This shit is just goated."
That's true.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's really entertaining.
It is.
You know?
Billy Wilder just has a knack for telling timeless stories. Yeah. Even when he's telling a story about the past, it's strangely relevant well into the future. So this one's great. Rob, another episode is in the books, and that means our episode on the past is soon to be in the past.
Let's put it behind us.
Yeah. The 6 movies we chose are Saturday Night, Memento, National Treasure, The World's End, Hard Times, and Sunset Boulevard.
Next time you're on the internet, visit our website at rewindvideopod.com, or you can look us up on Blue Sky or Letterboxd. Those are the social networks we use. You can send us an email at rewindvideopod@gmail.com. Ask us some questions, or ask us what the popcorn special is for the day.
A technology from the past that is still relevant today. Email.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about the popcorn machine. But yeah, I mean, both. That's true, both.
Both.
Yeah, yes. Also, don't forget to like, share, and or review the show. It helps people find us.
You and I need to be very careful between now and our upcoming episode because the theme is accidents. And there's no telling what's going to happen between en route to our next episode.
Well, luckily we've recently done an episode on safety.
That's true.
So we should be okay, right?
We should be good. We should be
all right.
Yeah. As always, we'll have 6 movies to recommend, but if you're looking for something in the meantime, don't hesitate to hit us up for something to watch. And we will see you next time.
Be kind. Recommend. Say